So this is the story of my DIY repair on my Lexus LS 460 and what I spent versus what the Lexus dealership would have charged me. I hope this video helps you out. So if you've seen my channel before, you might have noticed that I've had a supercharged 350 and then I moved to the ISF. I actually ended up selling that car just because it was super fun, just not practical. Pretty small, I'm a pretty big guy. I had my fun with the IS platform and I actually sold that, built up the Sequoia as a kind of family vehicle, family hauler, and then I was able to move into the LS 460. This one needed some work. I kind of knew it would need something, being as high mileage as it was, or is. It has 215,000 miles now. I drove it around for a little bit and the misfire just really started bugging me. So that's why I took it all apart to do all this and kind of address the injectors. So it's been a little bit of a journey the past year, kind of going away from the performance and IS stuff to kind of more of the luxury and family stuff. And this LS is super spacious too. We're here back in my shop with my 2013 LS 460. So this car, if you've been watching previous videos, it spent most of its life in Long Island, New York. I bought it for below market value and it has 200 and just about 15,000 miles on it now. So it is a lot of mileage for a 2013. It does have a little bit of upgrades, but it technically is a base model. We do have the triple beam headlights, cooled heated seats, heated steering wheel, the 20-inch LS 500 wheels. There's a couple little upgrades, the F-Sport bumper. That's all well and good, but the car's been misfiring since the day I got it. So I tried a couple different things, including some fuel system cleaners, injector cleaners. I even got a professional diagnosis from the Lexus dealer to see what they thought, and it all came to the conclusion that cylinder 6 has a bad injector, a direct injector. Now this engine has port injection and direct injection. So we're gonna dive in and try to repair everything that I can. I have most of the parts back here other than the injectors, which are gonna be very specific. So I'll need to look at the old ones in order to order the new ones. I am not a professional mechanic, but I am gonna attempt to fix the things on this car that are wrong. All right, so I have most of the plastics off. This I can take off, take all this off, and we do have a little bit of an oil leak here at the oil filler cap. You can kind of see some of the oil leak from the high pressure fuel pump here. There it's leaking. And then valve cover gaskets, you can see a lot of that. Well, maybe you can't see it, but there's a lot of oil buildup at the where the gasket would be. So I'm just gonna start taking stuff off. All right, a few minutes later, I got the ignition coils unplugged here. Got to do it on the other side. Nothing too exciting here as it's mostly removing nuts, bolts, plastic clips, and breaking some plastic. Remove this plastic cover so we can move the harnesses out of the way, get to the intake manifold, but all the plastic is so old and brittle, which I kind of expected, and it started to break. So I'm just kind of breaking it and going to have to buy a new one of these. It's just, oh, it's so brittle from so many heat cycles. This was already kind of cracked over here anyway. There we go, we got one. And that one's gone. We can see the wiring, kind of where everything's routed. We have our injector driver, and MAF sensors are in there. It's a lot of wiring. It's honestly been hard to find time to work on this. Now I really like this car, I really want to get it going, but I have been taking my time because this is something I want to do right, and there are a lot of steps here, so I really don't want to mess anything up. I came back at it with a fresh approach, and I managed to get all of the intake manifold bolts off as they are pretty buried. In usual fashion, as with any car repair I've done in the past, everything takes way longer than you think it will. So this has taken me a few hours just to get to this point, and I finally got to the intake manifold bolts. I also needed some more light, so I threw this light on there, and here is the PVC hose that I actually broke and had to find the part number for and reorder. It's pretty late on a Friday night. I finally got down to the shop and I'm starting the next process of the repair on the LS 460. And now we can get this intake manifold off. This is the OEM part, the plastic that I broke. So I'll be able to put all the wires in there at the end. And then this was that other piece that I broke. They sent me the wrong hose and I don't know if this is the right gasket, hopefully. I do have a PCV valve because while we're in there, we're gonna replace that. Let me tell you, this thing has been a pain. I just did not want to do this repair and I'm doing it anyway. Because I want a working, running car and this is what I have to do. I am saving money. It looks like somehow there's an intake manifold bolt that I hadn't seen before that I missed. I feel like the Lexus and Toyota engineers were like, let's put this in the hardest place possible to where nobody could get it. And they'll forget about it. It's probably in a manual somewhere, but I did not read the manual. Ain't nobody got time for that. I think I got it. This is exciting. I got this up and you can kind of see under it, so we're making progress. You do have a lot of technology going on here. You have direct injection, port injection, a lot of connectors and electronics. It's a pretty complex car. So that's loose. We're getting somewhere, I think. I honestly don't see how this intake manifold is gonna come off without the wiring all out of the way. All right, we have lots of movement. So that is attached. This is actually a battery connection that we can undo. There's no power going to it right now. And we have the throttle body off. Doesn't look that dirty. I had cleaned it a little bit. Yes! This is taking me way too long. This is finally off. You can see the intake manifold with the gaskets that are pretty hard, so it's a good thing we'll be replacing them. All right, so now we have the intake manifold off so we can kind of see what the heck is going on. This has been touched before. You can see on this one, it has a little bit of goop, so that has definitely been touched before. And then all of these injectors have zip ties on them, so they've definitely been touched before. I kind of want to pull all these, get them cleaned. In other news, we did actually get the right gasket for this. Here we go. Went to remove this injector. Unfortunately, the plastic broke. So I removed the other ones pretty successfully, but now I'm gonna have to get a new injector. There's not really a way to repair that, unfortunately. I did tape this up so nothing can fall into the engine. Along with this cam sensor, the connector's like one piece, it doesn't come out. So it was leaving a hole in the valve cover there, which I am going to do valve cover gaskets anyways. I can get a new sensor, wiring. I also found this. This needs to be resoldered. There's just a lot of little things that need attention. So just gonna continue on here. I'm gonna attempt taking off the whole fuel rail. All the injectors are disconnected. I want to pull them out. So I'm disconnecting the fuel rail, starting with what looks like a 12mm bolt. It seemed really easy to get off, which, hey, maybe that's all it is. That's all it needs. You can see the anti-seize on them, so another sign that this was opened up before. I'm going to do this. This harness is really in the way of the camera. But right here is the fuel rail. There's one on each side. Let's get all these bolts out. All right, so we got this one kind of coming out, and this is broken. This one actually looks okay. I got one fuel rail out. Whoop, we're dripping some fuel. Only 3 injectors came with it though, so I'm gonna have to pull the other injector. All right, over here on my workbench, we can kind of see that this dripped a little bit more fuel. I just took the whole fuel line off. It's easier to get it out that way. Looks like we have the one injector that's still stuck in there. I'm gonna try to get that. I don't actually know how to get these out. this is what I really wanted to look at. But you can see this is the broken connector. These connectors still feel pretty solid, actually. I don't want to speak too soon. These are all brown marks, but it looks like half of these are brown, half of them are black. You have to replace it with the correct type. Oh, there we go. This is the injector. There we go. It says Denso on this side, but you can't really read this. The same part number, and it has this brown band. Let's look at the other ones. I want to keep that one good, but this one's trash pretty much. Unfortunately, this one's broken here, so this can't be reused. There's no way that I know of to fix this. You can't just glue it. The connection won't be the same. I mean, this isn't even that dirty. So this was in the car like this. This was cylinder 8, 6 that had the issue, and then 4 and 2, because this was the back, this was the front, this is from the passenger side. So this is actually the injector that was misfired. But if you look at it, it's not really that different from the other ones. This is where things get really interesting, because this one was the hardest one to take out. It stayed in the car, and look how much dirtier it is. I actually kind of wiped it, and it's still dirtier. These all have white seals. This one has a black one. So this one was replaced before. It is Denso, or Denso, however you want to say it. Maybe my eyes are deceiving me, but it's the same part number too. Now I've also pulled the driver's side. So here's the passenger side we just looked at. Here is the driver's side. This one was broken. Let's pull it. Okay, so that one was a little harder to get out, but these have black markings on them, as you can see. So brown and black. This one is also the same part number as far as I can see. The injectors are out. So these are actually used OEM low mileage ones, because each one of these is about $300 to $400 a piece OEM, and I wasn't going to replace them all when this was the only one that was bad. So they're marked brown, so you can see there's a bunch of brown bands on each side. This is for the passenger side. I actually ordered a whole fuel rail, and I just popped one of my other injectors in, and we're gonna put it back together. Now, I did have this in earlier. I don't think I tightened things correctly, and I had to replace some O-rings on here, and there was a fuel leak, so kind of went back to step one, and these should be good now. Used some super lube to put these in with the new O-rings, so nothing should be bent or anything like that. So that's kind of an update where I'm at. I actually had this pretty much together, and I ran it, found the fuel leak, had to take everything back apart. So this time I'm kind of, that was a little bit of a test, but now I'm doing it the proper way. So we have the seal packing, and I'll tell you about that in a second. That's actually for this. This is the valley plate. So I have to clean this thing because you don't want dirt in your coolant, but this is the valley plate. It's a heat exchanger is really what it's called, but it's kind of known as the valley plate. It sits right there in the valley of the engine, the V8, and it has coolant run underneath it. Now this seal starts to break down over time, which mine wasn't bad, but it looked a little crusty. So I said, while I'm in here, let me replace it. If this goes bad, coolant starts leaking everywhere. And then of course we have the driver's side fuel rail. These injectors don't look too bad. I didn't really have too many problems with as far as breaking. I think I broke 2 of them on this side and 2 on this side because they were so brittle. So I just ordered OEM ones that looked decently clean. They seemed to work when I did test them. There was just a leak on this side. So hopefully we can put all that back together, and this won't be a crazy expensive fix. What we're gonna do today is take this plastic off I covered everything with. And there we go. You can kind of see the valley plate. This is what was underneath the plate. There's a ton of coolant in there usually, and that's what I'm gonna be resealing with this seal packing. This thing was like $80. It's kind of insane. There's other stuff you could use, but I figured let me use the OEM stuff just so that this is not gonna give me issues down the road. So that's a little bit of an update of where I am. Let me show you all the parts that I have off, and then also what I ordered to make this thing work. So the biggest part that I have off the car, I have the harness out this time. This is the injector harness. These usually break as well because they get so brittle, like the injector plugs itself. So it's just a lot of brittle plastic in here. It's kind of an interesting design. This is the pipe that goes between the fuel rails. So here is it's kind of like a PCV breather type thing. I don't know the exact name, but it holds a PCV valve, right? So when I was installing this, I realized it was cracked. I super glued it. I don't think there's a leak, but I said, you know what? A new one's only like 40 bucks. Let me just order it. So I actually have a new one of these right over there. And we're gonna take this fresh PCV valve out, put it in the other one. And then we have one of the fuel rail hoses. There's a lot of bolts, all the air intake stuff, all the PCV hoses. Some of them are a little hard, but they survived. This one did not survive, so I had to order a new one of that as well. We have the 4 knock sensors that are in the valley area, the 2 injector drivers, front and back. That's how I have them laid out. This, I actually had to buy a new one. This is the new one. I broke the nozzle on the original one. It was just so brittle. So ordered this from Rock Auto. That was like 50 bucks. We have all the intake manifold bolts. And then of course, this was another like 70 bucks. Kind of forgot about this. All this plastic broke, the original one, when I was taking it off of here. So this kind of, everything sits in there. And I had it on before, so I know I can do it. So I'll do it again, but this is kind of like the last step. So this goes between the valley plate, heat exchanger plate, and the water pump. It goes right kind of in there. But it needed new O-rings. So when you take it out, you're not supposed to reuse the O-ring. So I had to order 2 new O-rings, which made this a whole nother week of waiting for parts. So that's where we are. Now let me show you the new parts. Here's the PCV line, one of them, the breather lines. This is from Discount Parts Monster. So I think it's just a dealership that has really cheap prices, but Discount Parts Monster, you can get all these parts. Then I also got the new PCV ventilation hose because the other one was so hard and it kind of kept slipping off. So I figured that was cheap enough to grab it. I have this oil separation gasket and that kind of goes here, I believe. And then we have the 2 O-rings for the pipe that goes to the water pump from the valley plates. So the next step for me is actually to get this heat exchanger / valley plate back in, just so that's sealed up, and then I can do the injectors and stuff. This is apparently the newer seal packing. It's supposed to not fail as soon or something like that. I'm not really sure, but we're gonna read the instructions real quick and then get to work on that. But before I do that, I'm gonna have to make sure this is kind of cleaned up and get the new O-rings on it. This might not be the best tutorial. I'm just gonna put this on. Okay, and hopefully it won't roll, is what everybody's worried about. Because then you'd have another coolant leak in a different spot if this does roll. This is just aluminum, so it gets pretty scratched up, and I don't want to cause a leak anywhere. I think I got that. It looks solid. It kind of feels like it did before. If I pull out, it's not coming out. So here it is, seal packing. All right, everything now is torqued to 15 foot-pounds. I hope it doesn't leak, but it looks pretty good. It looks kind of like how it did before, with a nice edge to it, and everyth's torqued down, so I'm hoping we'll be okay. All right, now that the valley plate should be good, we have to get this old one out. Well, this is the new one. Scratches and grease on me, but it's coming back together. You can see everything's almost hooked up. almost ready for a fuel pressure check. Well, it's the next day, and unfortunately some bad news. I put the accessories on, which lets the fuel flow through the fuel pumps and everything like that, and the fuel rail, and I found some leaks. I had to take out the driver's side fuel rail because that's where it was leaking. You can kind of see some of the built up fuel there that's just leaked and sat there. I'm hoping I don't break another injector connector with all this in and out. It's a little scary because that is more money. Hopefully the O-rings will fix the problem. No fuel will leak. I can put the intake manifold back on, button everything up. Here's the fuel delivery pipes. I don't know exactly what they're called, but these are the O-rings that are leaking. I have 2 for the driver's side, just because when I ordered the other fuel rail, it came with 1 used. So yeah, they're all cracked. So that's gonna need to be replaced. The fuel rail doesn't look bad. I cleaned it. It looks okay. I don't think there's actually an issue with the fuel rail, but I'll double check any gaskets, O-rings, order all that stuff. And then here are the injectors themselves. You can see all these O-rings that some of them were replaced. I'm not really sure why they were leaking. It was really just the one. I think it was this one. As you can see, I'm running out of donor injectors. These are ones that I did not end up using, but I tried to use the O-rings and stuff like that. So I have 2 for the passenger side if I break them, but I do not have any more for the driver's side, which are the black mark versus the brown. So yeah, let's hope all of this works out. But time to order some parts and spend some money.
Several days later.
I am trying to finish this, including valve cover gaskets, fuel pump gaskets. We got the injectors back in with the new O-rings, the fuel rails back in. I've done so many little things to this and some bigger things over the past 3 months at this point. But yeah, let's dive in. Let's start with the valve cover gaskets, and I'll kind of show you what I did so far. Here we have all the parts. We have the fuel pumps. We have all of the ignition coils. So what I ran into last time, I got it pretty much together, but there was a fuel leak. Had to take the fuel rails out, replace all of those O-rings just to be sure. They fit in super snug now. They were actually kind of hard to get in. Of course, I lubed them. So now let's cut to me doing the valve cover gaskets and fuel pump gasket. So let's take a look inside the top of the engine here under the valve cover. Super clean actually, other than the oil residue for the fuel pump. Timing chain looks good. Yeah, super clean for the mileage. So we'll take this old gasket off. It's super hard, so I'm glad I'm changing that. That's what's leaking. Pretty much get all new seals for the ignition coils, as well as the valve cover and also the fuel pump. So all new gaskets. It's gonna be way better. All right, so we have the driver's side valve cover. This is gonna get replaced. I'm gonna try to clean this up as well. We do have a couple, the VVT actuator, cam sensor, I believe, and then of course the oil cap. This is really where the big leak was, so I definitely want to spray a little further. All right, so it's not perfect, but this is 11 years of dirt and grime. I'm not gonna get it off in like 30 minutes. This would just take way too long to get perfectly clean, but it's a little bit cleaner, and I cleaned up the edges just so I can kind of see if there are any future leaks. I'd be able to spot them. I think we have it evenly in there. So we're gonna move this so we don't get anything on it. And then we're gonna Again, 10 years worth. I don't know how good I'm gonna get it, but it will be a little bit cleaner. Kind of sits on top, but we're gonna wait to put that on until we get the fuel pump in. It also came with 2 new washers, so we will put those there. And they kind of will sit like that. There we go. You can kind of start to see where each part of the shape goes. Now I'll just have to like seat it in there. There's actually these 2 little O-rings that go on the threads of the fuel pump right there. So we got to change those out as well. The old ones look pretty worn and hard, so it's a good thing we're changing them. Might have been easier to get in actually. Valve cover is tightened down, but the fuel pump is still out. I'm gonna go ahead and start doing this side, get both valve covers back on, and then we can do both fuel pumps and reconnect this to both. That's just gonna be an easier way of doing it with kind of everything else. And now with the fuel pump off, we can start loosening all of the valve cover bolts. Boom. We got it. Wow, and this side looks super clean too. Let's clean this up and replace the valve cover gasket. Now everything's tightened down. We have the fuel pump in on this side. We can put in the ignition coils with the new spark plug seals. So today we're gonna finish up the repairs. Hopefully everything works and I can drive it again. So it's a mess over here, but now we can start getting all this stuff back onto the car so it can run again. Got the gloves on, let's go. So to get the intake manifold on, I'm gonna undo some of my work by disconnecting some of these connectors. Mostly because then I can move all these wires out of the way, get it on, and then put them back. That's kind of gonna be my final tack for this. So here's the old one, here's the new one. This one is so hard, and this one you can see is flexible, so that's what you want. So here's the intake manifold. We still have the new gaskets from last time. All right, so intake manifold is bolted down and torqued. time has come to start this thing. So before I start it up, I needed to add coolant. I still need to hook the battery up and secure it, and then also put these little foam pieces back onto the fuel pumps. The Lexus dealership originally quoted me about $8,000 to fix this, and I just did not want to do that. And I learned a lot along the way of this repair. I have about 1,500 into it right now. What has been done so far is the valley plate that's been resealed, all used low mileage injectors, new intake manifold gaskets, new valve cover gaskets, new spark plugs, new OEM coils, new MAF sensors, because I thought that at that point that was one of the issues. New VVTi solenoids. What else do we got here? This is all new because it cracked when I originally took it off. New O-rings and everything on the injectors. All right, we have the green light here in the ignition. So it always dies the first time when the battery's dead. My Lexus LS 460 is finally fixed and running and back on the road. So there you go. You can do it if it comes down to this. I mean, it wasn't fun. It wasn't super easy, but it's doable, especially with the right tools. But I think also a botched repair kind of led to some of this. So in all my research with the LS 460s, all of the direct injectors should have the same color band on where you plug it in. They all have like a mark, they call it. So it's either black, brown, I think there's yellow and green. This car had brown on the passenger side and black on the driver's side, which I thought was strange, but I said, hey, you know, it's been working all this time like that. I should just keep it like that. So the only reason I would have removed that is if I broke the connectors. And unfortunately, they get very brittle, the plastic in there, and they break. So that's why I removed them in the first place, or else, you know, if you don't have to touch them, don't. That's my advice. Another factor to this was also the battery. I have a battery that seemed pretty good, but when I had it on the tender, it never got above 9 volts recently. So there's a power problem. Well, when I jumped it on a jump pack, I could run the car off a jump pack that I have, and it ran great. And I was like, this is perfect. So I went to Walmart, got a $150 battery with a 3-year warranty, popped it in, and there we go. So with all of the repairs, here's how much I spent. Compared to the quote I got from my local Lexus dealer. The spreadsheet link will be in the description, and you can see what I have on the screen as well. These were from various retailers, including Discount Parts Monster, eBay, Amazon, Rock Auto, and even Walmart. And now this car is fixed and it works great. Drop in the comments, what do you think of this car and the repair? And would you do it yourself? Because you can. You kind of see everything I've done. It's definitely possible. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, follow along. Even if it's not with this car, I have a ton of other videos and other content. So if you like what I'm doing, I appreciate that. If you hit subscribe, helps the channel out. I want to say thank you for watching, and as always, keep those wheels turning. So long, farewell.